This is a Royal Enfield Bullet 350 from 2024. It's a 350cc single-cylinder air-cooled unit, produces about 20 horsepower, weighs about 200 kilos. It's quite slow, and a lot of people would say it's also quite boring. So, in this video, I'm going to try and explain why I bought one and why, after 12 months, I still own it.
The Bullet 350 has been produced for essentially the best part of the last 100 years. That makes it the longest production motorcycle in continuous production in history, and indeed one of the longest continuous production vehicles ever made, in fact. And I would argue that in spite of all the Moto Guzzi's out there, the Harley Davidsons, the Triumphs, the Ducatis to some extent, this is the most retro hipster kind of bike. Well, hipster's the wrong word, but this is the most, what am I trying to say? This bike probably has the most history out of all of them. It has the most heritage. You can't beat that. The Triumphs have only been produced since the 90s. The Honda Cub, yes, that was a great seller, but it hasn't been out for nearly as long as this. And Moto Guzzi, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure if you look into their history as a brand, they've been on and off for quite a while. But nothing comes close to this. This is the most original bike money can buy, and this is as OG as it gets. The bikiest bike. Now keep in mind that this has been produced through World War II, throughout the 20th century, throughout Indian independence, through like all sorts of stuff that's happened since 1930, whatever it was. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll put it somewhere in the video.
So I've had this bike for just over a year. And in that time, I've done about 5,500 miles on it. I use it mostly for commuting in an urban setting, mostly through London, getting to and from work every day. Not long after I bought it, I did have it professionally detailed and cleaned because it's something I plan to keep for a long time. And obviously I want to give it the best chance of not rusting and turning a crusty brown colour. I was quite interested in the classic 350. The only thing with them is that they are fairly common, and I wanted something just a little bit different. The Bullet 350 in other parts of the world is a very popular bike indeed, most notably in India. But here in the UK, despite it having its origins here, you don't really see too many of them. So it does serve as something that's a bit different on the surface, but mechanically identical to another bike which is pretty common. So in that sense you get the best of both worlds, where if you need to service it, if you need to look after it, if you need to find parts for it, it's not that difficult. But then you get the other half of there's not too many of them around. So it's quite unique. So this is the part of the video where I talk about things that I like about this bike.
The engine.
The interesting thing about air-cooled engines is that they feel a lot different to liquid-cooled engines. They rattle a bit more, they make a bit more noise. You do compromise on performance in a lot of areas, but there's a trade-off. Certainly with the previous iterations of the Bullet, I think there were probably a lot of complaints, especially with the big 500cc, that it was a bit too vibey. Certainly with this version, they've smoothed out a lot of that. And what you're left with, after taking away the excess irritation, as it were, is something that's quite distinctive and quite unique. And the other thing I'll say about this bike, and a lot of people say how slow and underpowered it can be, but what they don't necessarily mention, on the other hand, is how comfortable it is. Whether that be through the really big squishy seat, whether that be through the nicely shaped handlebars, but also the foot plates, rubberized foot plates. It gives you a bit more space. It dampens the vibrations a bit from that single cylinder engine. It's just, overall, it's a very comfy bike. It's very easy to live with. It's a really nice feature to have. I think with other bikes I've had, it's not really something I've factored in or thought about too much. Partly because I haven't commuted on them, but also because I've cared more about going fast, I've cared more about just looking quite cool, and it's something I've not really noticed because they haven't been that comfortable. It's not really something I've noticed until it's actually been comfortable. Certainly, I think this is probably the most comfortable bike I've had by quite a long way. And that's, you know, even with the Tiger 900 that I've had, where I've taken it on really long journeys, big adventures, I would still say this is probably more comfortable.
The engine.
I'm going to mention the elephant in the room, and it is, unfortunately, the lack of power. Now, for most of the time I'm using this bike, it's not really a problem. I'm commuting through an urban setting, the speed cameras everywhere, and you can't really go more than 20-30 miles an hour, even when you're filtering through traffic. It's more when you get onto dual carriageways, it's more when you get onto the slightly faster roads as well, motorways included, that it really begins to show up as a bit of a problem. It definitely wasn't a deal breaker for me, and I would say that you can still use this for occasional runs on a dual carriageway or a motorway. It's just, I wouldn't recommend using it for that on a regular basis, and if you do find yourself going on those roads more regularly, you probably do need something a bit more powerful. It will sit quite happily at 60, 65 miles an hour without a problem, without really fussing or complaining too much, but it's when you start to push it beyond that that it becomes quite noticeable.
This clock went all foggy.
The other thing I'll mention that's happened during my ownership is the clock. Now, in fairness, this isn't specific to the Bullet 350. This has happened on the Classic 350 as well. It's a fairly common issue which is often replaced and rectified under warranty. It was in my case as well. The only downside is that it doesn't keep the odometer. It doesn't keep the original mileage. So if that does happen to you, it's worth just taking a photo of the mileage before you change it over. So for context, brand new, this bike retails for a smidge under £5,000. And that puts it in a category where there aren't a lot of bikes. Certainly none that are 350cc anyway, certainly not here in the UK. You've got more than you used to now because it's a growing segment of the market, so you've now got the likes of BSA and Honda having a crack at it. But none of them really pay this much attention to detail. You see it in the badge on the tank, you see it on the pinstriping, you see it on the fact that there's not really a lot of plastic on here. The mudguards are fully shrouded and they're metal. That's a big part of why the bike is so heavy. But you see it in the switchgear as well, you see it in the instrument, even the little peak on the headlight. It's just little touches like that, especially also the fact that, I don't think I hear many other reviewers talk about this, the fact that the handlebar grips are contoured. Now, when you accessorise the bike, especially for me, it's very tempting to change that sort of thing, especially when there are some really nice other grips available. But on this occasion, I don't really want to. They're very nicely shaped to your hand. And again, it's all those little things which, on their own, they don't really mean anything. And if you talk about one of those things extensively, it probably sounds a bit weird and obsessive. But altogether, as a package, it just helps, it really elevates the bike. So just to wrap things up, I think it's fair to say a bike like this is something of an acquired taste, especially if you're in Europe or America. It is significantly less powerful than a lot of other bikes on the market. It is a lot less powerful than what we're used to, but if you commute regularly, if you're just looking to relax, chill, have a good time, then this is a brilliant bike for you. It is also very utilitarian in nature, and that comes through in the fact that it's very easy to service, it's very inexpensive to look after yourself, service yourself. Even getting it serviced at the garage a lot of the time isn't particularly expensive, even with inflation today and labour rates and what have you. It's also a very good looking bike, and quite possibly the best looking bike I've had. It harks back to a very distinctive time in history. So that's it for this video. Thank you very much indeed for watching, especially if you've made it this far. My name's Ollie, this is Turn the Key Motorcycles, and hopefully I'll see you again in the next one.